again, everybody. If we haven't met yet, my name is Josh, and I am the pastor here at Church on the Drive, and I am so excited to be with you today. You know, one of the things you may not know about me is that when I was growing up, I never really imagined I would be that quote-unquote family man. You know what I mean? Like, I can remember being a teenager, like the guys who were just moving all this for us, and I can remember being that age, and I didn't even think about living past the age of 18. You know what I mean? Like, I never thought about it. I wasn't one of those people who thought, man, one day I'm going to play catch in the front yard with my son or go to a daddy-daughter dance or something like that. That never crossed my mind. And I remember turning 19 and going, well, I'm officially old. Life is over now. Like, that's it. You know, like, nothing fun's ever going to happen again. It gets so much better after that, too, doesn't it? I never really thought about those things. It never crossed my mind. And then one day I woke up and I was married and I had 3 kids and a mortgage. And that's when I said, you're old, man. You are officially old now. You have jumped the shark. It's over with now. It's over with, man. But family's great. It's not like some major drag on me. Don't get me wrong. Like it's a good thing, and it brings so much joy to my life. My kids bring so much joy. There's so many good things about family. The problem is when it comes to family, we idolize and we idealize family, don't we? We think about it in terms of the perfect family or whatever we've been led to believe is the perfect family. And usually the way we think about it is in terms of mom, dad, son, daughter. That's the perfect family. And usually the son is the captain of the football team, probably a quarterback because all the best football players are, right? Sorry, I played quarterback in high school. It was awesome. I wasn't, but it was fun to do, right? And then the daughter is like valedictorian, and she's also in the band or a cheerleader or something else like that. Like, that's the perfect family. We idolize that. We idealize that. But here's the problem. 99.9% of families aren't that way, are they? 99.9% of families are not that way. They usually don't work out like that. And usually the hopes and dreams you have for your family don't work out the way that you hoped and dreamed that they would. See, we expect our families to look a little bit like this. Right? Happy, smiley, everybody's having a good time. These are my 2 daughters, Sloan and Sawyer. Everybody loves each other. The kids stay young forever. They always come running to the door when dad gets home and says, Daddy, you're home. Right? They always run and snuggle with mom, and nothing ever changes. It's always great, and they always listen to you. And if they don't listen to you the first time, you can bribe them with candy. The problem is, we look for this, but family is most often more like this. It's most often a little bit more like this. Like somebody's doing fine, somebody's not doing fine. And there's all these interpersonal issues that come into play. There's these moments where somebody really gets way off track, and then the rest of the family has a lot of tension and anxiety about that. So while family is this beautiful thing where you just love each other and you're there for each other, it can also be this thing that brings you a lot of stress. Maybe hurts sometimes too. It can be this thing that you don't really know what to do with, right? Like, so this last week, you may have noticed I've been wearing a mask for the most part, unless I'm up here. This last week, my newborn baby somehow, don't know how it happened, tested positive for COVID. Like, it was a really kind of a scary moment, way earlier in the week. And so all week, my kids, all 3 of them, and my wife and I, we've been at home, just trying to follow the CDC guidelines and make sure that we're keeping everybody around us safe. And just a quick plug, make sure you're keeping everybody safe too. So we decided to stay home and to be away from everybody as much as possible if we could. And it was this beautiful thing. We got to be with each other. We got to love on each other. I got to spend nap time with them, right? And so what that means is my 2 older girls, Sawyer and Sloan, they want to get into the same twin bed with me, that's Sloan's bed, and take a nap, which is, it works out about like you think it might. And And so but that's fun, and it's this really cool moment. It's a sweet moment, and you're thinking the whole time, like, this isn't going to last forever. I need to enjoy this and not freak out when they keep moving around all the time. And we're getting to go on these long walks with each other, and their grandpa would come by and take them on these long walks together. They only fell in the lake once. That's all fun, and it's this beautiful time. And there was this one moment where the baby is screaming, and she's fine. She had a fever for like a day, and then everything went well after that, like nothing after that. She was screaming on one of the days when she didn't have a fever. She just needed somebody to console her, as you know, with babies that happens. And so one of the girls was over by her. The girl will remain nameless. She was over by her. She's just singing this lullaby to her, just trying to console her, soothe her, right? Rockabye baby, in the sweet, right? All that stuff, in the treetops, when the wind blows, all that. And you're like, wow, that's a really sweet moment, a really sweet family moment. And so we turn away, and we look back 2 minutes later, and that same kid has stuck her toe in the baby's mouth. That's family. That's family, right? That's family. Family is this beautiful thing, but it's messy and it's uncontrollable, but hopefully it's also safe. Today we're kicking off a new series here at the church that we're calling We Are Family. We are family, because here's our premise. Church is supposed to be and was designed by God to be a second family for you. It's supposed to be that way. It's not an institution that you just are a part of. It's not some Christian country club that you just get to belong to. It's supposed to be a second family to you. People that you journey through life with, that you have the highs and the lows with, that you go through all of this stuff. And what I know is so great about this church is that many of you have been part of this church for more than 50 years, and you have journeyed through life together. That's incredible. I mean, that's an incredible stat, that you've been journeying through life together for over 50 years. And it's something I want to be able to say about me. That when I'm 85 years old, 90 years old, I say, yeah, I've known them since I was 35. I've known them, and we did all this stuff together. I was at their graduations. They were there for me when this bad thing happened. And that's what church is supposed to be. But family is kind of messy sometimes. And what I know also is that some of you have had great experiences, but some of you have had not so great experiences because family got a little bit messy. What I also know, and what I think you know, is that all of us as individuals, we try to take the gravitational pull of any group we're in, and we pull it toward ourselves. We become the gravitational pull of that organization that we're in, or that family, or that group that we're in. Like whenever you decide with your family of 10 or 12 or 20, whatever it is, you want to go out to eat after church. And everybody's like, well, I'd like to go to McDonald's, or I'd like to go to Tijuana Flats, or I'd like to go to College Park Cafe or to Cristo. And everybody's got their ideas, but eventually somebody steps and goes, I want to go here. Now that's a minor way of explaining it. But haven't you ever noticed that in families, there's always one or two people that start really trying to get their way all the time, and then there's a few of you that just kind of get really annoyed by that, and there's a few that just don't care? That translates into church family too. So what we want to do is we want to talk about the who, the what, the why, and the how of church family. And the best way I know to do that is to look at the great picture of church family in the early church with the earliest Christians. You know, after Jesus died, his followers all scattered. Right? And we're not just talking about the 12. There were a lot more than 12 people following Jesus, but they were the ones who were closest to him, you know. But he had at least 120 other people who were always following him around. There's probably more. When he died, they scattered. And by the way, we can't blame him for that, can we? Because imagine you've dedicated your life to this cause. You believe Jesus is the Messiah. You believe Jesus is the anointed one. You also believe he's the Son of God. And then he dies. You probably feel ashamed. You feel foolish. You're probably wondering, like, how did this happen? You're probably scared for your life too. Think about it. Like, you have to be scared for your life if that happens. Because they just killed the guy that you had said was the Son of God and was going to change everything and restore Israel and make the earth what it was supposed to be again. They just killed that guy. And the way they killed him was to say he was fomenting revolution against the Roman Empire. That's how Rome bought into killing Jesus. And so if they killed the guy who's the revolutionary, don't you think they're going to come after the other revolutionaries? So they're running for their lives, they're scattering, and they're wondering, what happened? How did we get this so wrong? And then they came back together and they turned the world upside down. They came back together and they changed this world more than any other group has ever changed this world. The question is, what happened? They said what happened, what changed their mind, what brought them back together, what inspired them to change the world forever, was Jesus appeared to them after his death, fully alive, truly alive. They said, that's what happened. That's what changed everything. That's why I'm willing to go to the farthest ends of the earth. That's why I'm willing to die for this. See, if they were making all this up, they wouldn't have died. They would have just ran away and nobody would have known. But they truly believed that Jesus was the Son of God and that he had been resurrected. And they said, that's something we're dying for. That message, that good news, that now we have been brought near to God because of Jesus' sacrifice. That is good news that deserves to be told, whether we die or not. I could talk forever about that. But what I want you to understand, what I want you to know, is that they came back together. And they would preach these sermons, and people would come to faith. They were convinced. Like in one of the earliest moments, a group of the followers are together, and a guy named Peter, you've probably heard of him before. Peter was Jesus' number one disciple, number one follower. Peter has this impromptu speech, this impromptu sermon, and he starts preaching, and people believe him. In the thrust of his sermon, there's not a lot of graphics, there's not a lot of images of ducks and things like that. There's no pictures of cute kids or dogs or anything like that. He just lays it out there. And essentially, his message is this: Jesus was prophesied about. He was the Son of God, and he proved it with all these miracles that every single one of you saw him do. You killed him. God raised him from the dead. Now say you're sorry. That's essentially the message. You go read Acts chapter 2. That's essentially what he says. Jesus was the Son of God. He proved it by all these miracles. He was prophesied about. You killed him anyways. But God raised him from the dead. Now say you're sorry. Let me tell you what happened next. Those who accepted his message were baptized. About 3,000 were added to their number that day. Listen, I'd be grateful if 3 of y'all came up here today. That'd be awesome. 3,000? Are you kidding me? You have to think, okay, well, how many people were standing there as he's talking? They didn't even have microphones. How did they hear him? But somehow, 3,000 people hear that message he had. And here at the end, now say you're sorry. They hear all of that and they say, y'all want to sign up for that. So they accepted his message, and the first thing they did was they were baptized. Now that's not because there's anything magical or mystical about baptism, right? It's just a symbol. It's an outward expression of what they had decided inwardly. See, when you're baptized, that's just you, along with all these people here, that's just you saying, I have committed to following Jesus. I am making Jesus king of my life. I'm not just intellectually accepting this and consenting to the idea. I'm staking my flag in the ground and I'm saying I'm following Jesus from here on out, come what may. Because they knew what was going to come. They knew there were people after him. But they were so convinced that they said, I'm going to have this public profession of my faith in Jesus, of my faith that Jesus was who he said he was, and that he is now king of my life. And my hope is that each and every one of you would make a similar profession. Like, that's why we do this thing, people. That's it. We do this so that we can tell our friends and our family and everybody else, this is what I'm doing. I'm following Jesus. And if you've never been baptized and you're a follower of Jesus, I want to encourage you. Think about it. It's a great opportunity to tell others where you put your faith. But about 3,000 people, they were baptized and they were added to their number. So the way that you were added to the number of the followers of Jesus in those days, in this first church, was you decided to follow Jesus and you were public about it. That's it. That's what they did. Now that's how you got added to the number. Here's what they did once they were added to the number. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Those two things go together, right? We're coupling. He kind of repeats it. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, so they're learning this stuff, and to fellowship. They're hanging out with each other. One of the things we kind of forget is that when somebody comes to faith, they don't know it all. They don't know it all. If you've been a follower of Jesus for a long time, like sometimes we can forget people who come to faith, they don't know everything they're supposed to know right then. And they certainly didn't know then. Like they didn't have a Bible they were walking around with on their phones or they could pull out at any moment. They didn't know what they were doing. They're trying to figure this thing out the best they could. And so they devoted themselves to learning from the apostles what Jesus had passed on to them. Now, notice that word, devoted. That's not meaning like every once in a while they showed up and they hung out together. No. They were always doing this. It was a priority in their life to learn and to grow together and to be with each other, because there's something happening whenever you're surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals who have also said, I'm going to make Jesus king of my life. Because when there's somebody else around you who's saying, I'm making Jesus king of my life, there's an accountability factor there. There's somebody who's spurring you on, who's encouraging you. It's pushing you to follow Jesus with everything you have, to follow through on your baptism where you said, Jesus is king of my life. Now, something you have to know about the first Christians is this. They were Jewish. They were Jewish. By and large, all of them were Jewish. Not maybe a few weren't, but by and large, these first Christians were Jewish. And just like anybody else, just like you, just like me, they brought all of their history to the table. When they began following Jesus and they said, I'm part of the way, they brought all of their history to the table, all of their heritage, all of the scriptures they'd always known, all of their culture, all of the community they've ever had. They brought that to the table. And so while they're trying to figure out what it looks like to follow Jesus, they have all of that, let's just call it baggage, like sitting here on their shoulder. And they go, oh yeah, well, here's how we did it before. Maybe that's how we should still do things. And so they kept having to come back and go, well, maybe we don't need to make everybody be circumcised, or maybe we don't have to abstain from these certain foods. Maybe all foods are open to us now, and maybe you can go into the homes of people who aren't Jewish anymore, all of that. And so they're working this out with fear and trembling as they devote themselves to the apostles' teaching and they hang out together and love each other well. But just like you and just like me, they brought all of their life to the table, and they had to sort through those things. And as they were figuring out, sometimes they messed up. And people had to come back and correct and help, because what they were really trying to do is figure out how to be this new family of God. What does it look like to be a family of God? One of those letters has survived from antiquity. We call it the letters to the Hebrews. And it was written primarily to Jews, Jewish believers who had scattered across the empire. Now imagine you're one of them. Everywhere you show up, the towns you're in, most of the people hate you. Seems fun. So not only are you, as a Jewish man or woman or boy or girl, you're in a place where all the non-Jewish people kind of don't like you too much. But now you're a follower of Jesus. And a lot of the Jewish people that you've always known are turning their nose up at you a little bit. You're really feeling a little bit more isolated. They're trying to figure out how to do this family of God thing. And so this letter to the Hebrews talks a lot about unity and said, look, you've started following Jesus. Now you need to put it into action. Now you need to do something with it. I want to pick up, I want to show you something here in Hebrews chapter 10. He says, therefore. Now that's an important word. Every time you hear therefore, think about what came before it. And what came before it was essentially this. You're a Christian. You're a follower of Jesus. Now you need to know what to do with that. Here's what you're going to do. So he says, therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus. So we have confidence to enter the most holy place. Remember I said they are Jewish, and they're bringing all of their historically religious baggage to the table, all of their heritage, all the stuff they've ever known about religion, they're bringing it to the table. And one of the things in that bag was that the high priest once a year would go into this place called the Holy of Holies, or the most holy place in the temple, and that's where sacrifices were made so that God would forgive Israel. It's one of many sacrifices, but it was by and large the biggest sacrifice of the year. By a new and living way opened for us through the curtain, that is his body. So Jesus has died, and we talk about his blood in the Bible. We're talking about his death, being beaten, placed on a cross. So this broken body that's been bleeding, put on a cross, this body is now the curtain for the Holy of Holies. Here's the thing. The entranceway to the Holy of Holies in the temple had a curtain there. And only one person was allowed to go in. It was the high priest once a year, and it wasn't always the same one. Then we go on. And since we have a great priest over the house of God. So we'll stop there for a second. He says, brothers and sisters, since this is true, since Jesus died and was a sacrifice for us, and now we have a way to God. So imagine, if you will, use your holy imagination for a moment. Imagine there's this curtain, and on the other side is God. Now imagine, you never got to go there. You just had to rely on somebody else to go over and talk to God for you. What the writer of Hebrews is saying now is, now Jesus is standing in the way. In the heavenly realms, Jesus has pulled this curtain back and is holding it and saying, come on in. That's essentially what the writer of Hebrews is saying. Because of Jesus and what he's done, he has the right to welcome you on in because he is the sacrifice. He's a living sacrifice, not one that's dead on the altar right there. He got up off the altar, now he's standing, opening the way for you. So because of all of that, the writer says, let us, verse 22, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with the full assurance that faith brings. I want you to take note of that faith, right? That's my trust in Jesus, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience and having our bodies washed with pure water. Now that washed with pure water is what? Baptism. The whole idea around baptism was that it was a symbol. And the symbol was this: I'm letting go of all the impurities, all the nastiness, all the ugliness of my former life. Now that I'm following Jesus, the symbol is I'm washing all of that and I'm going forward brand new with a clean conscience because Jesus has forgiven me. And some of us need to remember that Jesus has forgiven you. You can go forward with a clean conscience. You should go forward with a clean conscience because all that's in the past. Washed clean. He goes on. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. So we talked about faith. Now we've got hope. And what is that hope? That we have a way back to God. And that because of Jesus, we don't have to die forever. We will live forever. We have eternal life. And let us, he says, verse 24, Let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. So there's faith, then there's hope, then there's love. He says, so as we're doing this, consider how we might spur one another on to love and good deeds. That's why we gather together. We need to be encouraged. We need to be pushed. We need to be prompted to go that direction. Look, here's what I know. I've been doing this a long time. I've been leading ministry since I was 16 years old. That's over 20 years at this point. I'm telling you, the people who stay strong in their faith are the ones who have a strong connection in a small group and in a church. The ones who stay the strongest in their faith, who hold unswervingly to the hope that we profess, are the ones who have a strong connection to a community of faith, to a church family. Over and over and over. Now, there are some outliers on that. Don't get me wrong. Maybe you're that person. But if you want to follow Jesus to the best of your ability, if you want to stand strong, the best thing you can do is be connected to a church family. Here's how the writer ends it. It says, not giving up meeting together. Let's spur each other on to love and good deeds by not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing. Many had started to stop meeting together. They quit coming together because they were nervous about what was going to happen. People around them didn't like them. They were being persecuted. They were scared for their lives. And here the writer of Hebrews is saying, don't be scared. You have a great hope. Keep meeting together. You need these people around you to keep you strong and following Jesus well. Keep meeting together and encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. That's the day of the Lord, the day they were waiting for Jesus to return. So as we look at the early church, I think something becomes very, very clear. And if you don't hear anything else I say today, I want you to remember this, that being part of a church family is part of following Jesus. Well, you know, I can worship God out on a boat fishing or in a deer blind. I can worship God just, enjoying. That's true. Everything we do, we can worship God. Everything we do, we can worship God with everything at our disposal. You can worship God out on that fishing boat and on that deer blind or at your kid's soccer game or whatever. You can worship God in all of those ways. But you need other people around you. Being a part of the church of a church family is part of following Jesus. At least if you're going to do it well. So one of the things I want to talk just for a moment about, I don't know if you're like me, I like to make lists, and whenever I think about an event, I go the who, what, where, when, why real fast, just to clear my thoughts. So I want to talk with you for just a moment about the who is following Jesus. And that's anyone who commits to making Jesus king of their life. Like we saw that already in Acts chapter 2. You get to be part of a church family if you've said, Jesus is the king of my life, and you have made that profession. I've made this profession of my faith to other people. I'm committed to making Jesus king of my life. Now, you may wonder why I say it that way and not make him the Lord of your life, right? Because king of your life just makes more sense, I think. Because it's not just I'm intellectually assenting to this. It's I'm intellectually assenting to this, and I'm going to do what Jesus says to do. I'm going to actually live out this faith that Jesus has given me. That means I'm going to take care of the poor and those who don't have anything to eat and those who don't have any clothes, access to clean drinking water. I'm going to do those things. And I'm going to do this surrounded by other people who are also doing these things. So that's the who. Anyone who commits to making Jesus king of their life. Now's the what. Right? We talked about it. This is the ecclesia. If you look in the Greek, that's the word in the New Testament that is used for church. What happened was somewhere along the line when we moved from Greek into Germanic languages and into English, they started calling church. The problem was church in those Germanic and English languages had more of a building connotation than a group connotation. Ecclesia means a group of people, an assembly. And in this context, called out people, specific people. We're an ecclesia. That's what a church family is. It's not a building. It's not just an organization. It's not an institution. The church is supposed to be a group of people, a family. And you might also wonder, why do we even do this? It's because we need each other. We need each other. I need you just as much as you need me. And she needs you just as much as he needs her. We all need each other. We need other people to drag us along sometimes and to push us along. We need each other. We need to publicly show our commitment to Jesus and his people. Because isn't there something about when you see somebody else living out their faith that just kind of inspires you to do the same? And isn't there something that prompts you to do everything you can for Jesus when you see other people also doing everything they can for Jesus? We need each other because we need to stop trying to be independent Christians. We need to quit trying to do that. We need to let ourselves be held accountable. The moments in my life when I've gotten into the most trouble is when I had the least amount of accountability. And I think the same is probably true for you. These are also great opportunities when you're part of a church family where you get to use the spiritual gifts that God's given you. Every single one of you has a spiritual gift. Every single one. And you've been called by God to use them. God gave them to you for a purpose. Now you need to use them with purpose in the context of a church family. You're going to help other people grow. And finally, let's talk about the how. Here's how we do church. We covenant together. We covenant together. And if you're not familiar with what a covenant is this. You and I have an agreement. We have an agreement. But it's not like a contract. A covenant says, I'm going to fulfill my part. I'm going to fulfill my part of this covenant whether you fulfill yours or not. And the closest thing I can imagine to that right now is, in our modern era, is the relationship between parents and children. Like, I'm always going to be my girl's dad, no matter how they act. I'm always going to love them. And I'm always going to go to the ends of the earth for them, no matter how they act, no matter what they do. Maybe you feel that way about somebody else you have a relationship with in a different way. Maybe it's your parents, or maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a friend. And you can understand that concept of covenant. But that's what we are doing here. This isn't a contract. Right? We covenant together. We call this, in our church setting, and what we've done for years, we call this church membership. When you're a member of the church, basically what we're saying is you are a covenant partner. We have a covenant partner when you're part of this church. When you decide, I'm going to be a member of that church family. You're covenanting. You're saying, I'm going to be here and I'm going to be part of this whether you do your part or not. I hope you do, but I'm still always going to be growing with you no matter what. I'm going to do this together. If you're here in the room, you probably noticed that there are some cards in the seat next to you, and you maybe even read a little bit about it. I want to draw your attention to those for just a moment. If you're at home, this is what they look like, but you can go online, and we'll send that link out later. You have an opportunity today. If you want to covenant with a church family, say, yes, I'm going to covenant with this church family, and I want to become a member of this church. Some of you, you've been coming for a while, and you've yet to make this decision. A lot of you, you're already members of our church. Wherever you're at, I want to encourage you to fill this out. So if you're a member of our church, you know this already, hopefully from business meetings and other announcements we've been sending out. We're asking everybody who's already a member of our church to just affirm their church membership. Check that little box there. Affirm your church membership, and you're going to turn it in at the end of service on your way out today. If you're not a member yet, and you said, yeah, I want to be part of this church family, today's the day, man. I'm not going to make you walk down front or jump on the stage or anything like that. Just check that box that says, I want to be a church member. Put it in the basket on your way out when people be at the doors. Maybe you're like, I don't want to be I don't want to be a church member yet. I'm not ready for that, or I've got some other stuff going on. That's okay too. But if you'd like more information, there's a box for you to click on that as well. But know this, when we talk about church membership, we're talking about covenanting together, being there for each other, journeying through life together as we push each other towards Jesus and point each other toward Jesus with everything we've got. That's what it's all about. My prayer for you is that you would commit to following Jesus with a church family that loves you and will bless you and will draw you closer to Jesus. A church just like this one. Let me pray for you. Lord, as we hear babies make the noise that babies make, we're so thankful for family. We're thankful for the families of our church that make up our church. We thank you for the life they bring to each of us. God, I thank you for the family that we have in this church. I thank you for the family that we have as part of being, that we covenant together. And I pray for everyone listening to me right now, that they would have the courage to commit to a church family and to be held accountable by that church family and to be loved by that church family and courageously pushed forward as they try their best to follow you. Help us as a church family to love people well and to be the type of family you created us to be, even when it's messy and even when it's not. We thank you. Amen.